In June 1991, my daughter, Nicky, and I made the train journey from Beijing to St Petersburg via Irkutsk and Moscow, a distance of just over 6,000 miles, encompassing 7 time zones. This journey is portrayed through a series of still photographs, which begin with a visit to Beijing, the capital of the People's Republic of China. In 1991, bicycles still rule the roads. Tiananmen Square, the third largest square in the world, is of great cultural significance. It dates from 1651, although it has since been enlarged. Its name translates as the Gate of Heavenly Peace. It is also the site of Mao's tomb, seen here beyond the sculpture. In June 1989, exactly 2 years before our visit, it had been the scene of a brutally suppressed student uprising. To the north, it is bordered by the Forbidden City. Built between 1404 and 1420, which contains 900 major buildings. It has been the home to 24 emperors, who must all be turning in their tombs to see their once sacred palace invaded by hordes of lesser beings from all over the globe. Visitors are photographed in costume or alongside a replica of the Dowager Empress Cixi. Even the cleaning ladies dress the part. The many pavilions have graceful traditional roofs, as revealed in this view over the Forbidden City from Jingshan. These examples are from the Summer Palace, which we visit the following day. The Summer Palace dates from around the 1700s. This pavilion is known as the Marble Boat. The Empress Dowager, Cixi, is said to have diverted 30 taels of silver, around 650 short tons, intended for the navy, to rebuilding the palace and its grounds in 1888. We visit the zoo specifically to see the pandas. Before passing through the hills north of Beijing to visit the Great Wall of China, on which work started around 700 BC. Its officially recognized length of 5,500 miles is equal to twice the driving distance from New York to LA, or roughly the distance from London to Cape Town. The most prolific construction period was during the Ming Dynasty in the 14th century. The rain and cascade of colourful umbrellas add to the drama of this amazing example of superhuman endeavour. After 3 days of visiting the major sites around Beijing, we make our way to the railway station to discover we are joining a group from Hong Kong, all Cantonese from ordinary walks of life, such as a bookkeeper or a taxi driver. We travel on the Russian train routed through Manchuria. On alternate days, the Chinese trains run via Outer Mongolia. These tracks mark the start of a ribbon of steel that snakes across the limitless steppes and taiga to join with the European network and ultimately link the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. In December 2012, the regular fare from Moscow to Vladivostok on the Pacific coast was $2,016 US for the 6,152-mile, 6-day journey. A sleeper berth raised this to $450. In 1991, the trans-Siberian was already diesel or electric, but steam engines were still in common use in mainland China until the end of 2005. We make a brief stop in Harbin, famous for its ice sculptures in the dead of winter. we reached the Chinese-Soviet border, being inspected first by Chinese officials, and then, once we had crossed the line marked by watchtowers and barbed wire, by Russian soldiers. Chinese railways run on a standard gauge of 4 feet 8.5 inches. Russian trains run on broad gauge, which is almost 3 inches wider. At the border, the carriages are lifted by fixed jacks. The standard gauge bogies are removed and replaced by those of broad gauge, an operation taking 1.5 hours. Once across the border, the staff in the waiting rooms, the style of the buildings, and even the scenery itself undergo radical change. The line skirts the southern edge of Lake Baikal and arrives in the town of Irkutsk, where we disembark and, to our surprise, are met by Masha, a Russian guide who has flown all the way from Moscow to meet us. Irkutsk came to prominence in the 19th century when artists, officers, and nobles were exiled to Siberia for the December uprising against Tsar Nicholas I. The town became their center for cultural and intellectual life. They built attractive houses, which, over the years, have sunk into the ground due to thawing and freezing of the permafrost. While in Irkutsk, we are taken on an excursion to Lake Baikal, which, at 400 miles long and 5,387 feet deep, makes it by volume the largest lake in the world, containing 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water. We continue our journey to Moscow aboard the train coming from Vladivostok on the Pacific coast. A train journey such as this is like riding a magic carpet. You lose track of time, and life aboard the train becomes a world unto itself. With every passing mile, you feel the immensity of distance as the tapestry of the landscape and its inhabitants unroll before your detached gaze. At periodic stops along the way, passengers queued for snacks. Every wheel is tapped with a hammer to check for cracks. Brake pads are inspected and replaced when worn. In Moscow, we visit Red Square with its striking landmark, St. Basil's Cathedral. Red Square has many parallels with Tiananmen Square in Beijing. It is overlooked by the historic Kremlin, and like Tiananmen, it is of great cultural significance. It is the site of Lenin's tomb, where, as in Beijing, long queues wait to view the mortal remains of a long-dead tyrant. Masha escorted us to Moscow University, where we were surprised to see a notice board documenting the last gasp of violence in Vilnius by the outgoing regime. Nearby was a view over the Moscow River, where the street vendors were peddling Matryoshka dolls, including some with political flavor, showing Gorby with Yeltsin and lesser politicians nested inside. A street photographer shares a bench with his model while awaiting customers. A visit to the impressive Fountain of the Friendship of the People, built in the Park of Soviet Economic Achievements, displays 16 maidens representing different regions of the Soviet Union. The park attracted many local people enjoying rides on horse-drawn carts and other amenities. Among the crowds is a man dressed as Jesus Christ, with a crown of thorns, and another accompanying him in the garb of a Roman soldier. Drab apartment blocks contrast with magnificent gilded domes and spires of religious buildings. This is the Tsar cannon, cast in 1586 with an internal bore of 35 inches. It has never fired a shot in anger. We continue our journey by train to Leningrad, built by Peter the Great in 1703. The city was renamed Petrograd in 1914 and Leningrad in 1924, before reverting to St Petersburg in 1991, right after our visit. This naval ship is the Aurora, moored in the Neva River. It was a blank round fired from this gun on her foredeck that signaled the start of the revolution in 1917. The ship took part in the Russian-Japanese War in 1904 and was in Bangkok in 1911 for the coronation of the King of Siam. St Petersburg has many elaborate buildings and statues. This is the Summer Palace, gutted by the Germans during the siege of Leningrad in World War II. This is the Winter Palace, stormed by the Bolsheviks led by Lenin on November the 7th, 1917. The Hermitage, one of the world's most famous museums, is housed here. With 2.7 million items on display, it contains works from every major artist, from Leonardo through French Impressionists to Picasso. It is a beautiful city, which in 1991 looked very tired after 75 years of communist rule. Many of the shops had little to offer, and large queues developed when anything special was to be had. The locals maintained their sense of humor. In this cartoon set in the visa office, the woman is asking why the man wants to go abroad, and he replies, to buy socks. We complete our visit with a cruise along the canals in a tour boat. Sadly, it was time to go our separate ways. Nicky continued on to England by rail, by way of Poland and Western Europe, having made the entire journey from Beijing to Bath by surface transport, while I flew back to Taiwan via Bangkok on Aeroflot.